which NFL division is the best and which NFL division is the worst? We're about to find out because I'm ranking every NFL division entering 2023 based on the strength of each team, the competitiveness from top to bottom of the division, and how I project each team inside that division for this season. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button and make sure to comment because I love to hear your opinion. I really do love to hear your opinion. Even if you disagree with me, let me know in the comment section below. And let's go and rank every division from the worst to the best. At number 8, I'm going with the AFC South. And the reason I'm taking the AFC South is because I really do not see more than 2 teams winning this division, and I don't really see more than 1 team making the playoffs. In a realistic world, I think only the Titans and the Jacksonville Jags can actually win this division, and I believe Jacksonville is the only team that can be a real contender this year. Jacksonville maybe can take that step forward where Trevor Lawrence is elite. We know what Doug Peterson can do and what he can win as a head coach. Maybe they get a big jump from Calvin Ridley helping them on offense, making them an elite offense. Maybe Trayvon Walker gives them that big boost on defense this season in his sophomore campaign, along with other young defensive players that are on the rise, like Cisco or Campbell or maybe Josh Allen or Lloyd. Any of these players could take off this season, and I wouldn't really be surprised. The offense is already talented. Etienne, Ingram, Kirk. The addition of Ridley makes them a very promising team. But other than Jacksonville, I don't think a lot of people are excited for this division. I've already told you what I think of Tennessee. I think they're underrated. I really do. So this really speaks to the rest of the division. If I like Jacksonville and I think the Titans are competitive and they're underrated with a strong defense and excellent coach who always keeps his team in the game. They just signed DeAndre Hopkins. They still got Derrick Henry. Yeah, the O-line's a question mark, but you can win with Ryan Tannehill. I think they're going to compete for a playoff spot. Maybe not make it, but compete. So the Colts, they're not very good. I think they're the worst team in this conference. I'm not even lying. I think that. Now, if Minshew's the quarterback, how does that look? If Richardson's the quarterback, how does that look? I think it looks different with those two guys. I think Minshew, maybe he's a bit more efficient and effective with the passing game, but he doesn't bring any dynamic nature to the running game. Richardson's almost the opposite, where they're not going to have a passing game, but they'll be very fun because he can run and he's athletic, and it will be like Justin Fields last year with Chicago. The O-line's okay. The receiving core's all right. Maybe a little bit underrated. Jonathan Taylor's upset already. The defense is kind of lousy, actually, especially in the secondary. So I don't really see the Colts being great at all. I think the other team, the Houston Texans, actually could be better than they have been. But it's on the back of young players, like a new quarterback, CJ Stroud, who's a rookie. He's going to make rookie mistakes, and he doesn't have a great receiving core around him. Yeah, they have a running game. They have a good offensive line. I like DeMeco Ryans, but it's his first year. They've got a lot of young players like Will Anderson they're having to rely on defense. Stingley, Petrie, all these guys that they're hoping can take that next step are all super young, and they're going to go through their bumps onto their way to success. I feel like they'll be better this year. I think they'll surprise some teams. I think they'll be competitive. I don't think they'll be good. So overall, I just see the South being a 2-team race. I think one team has a chance to be a breakout type of team. 2 teams are probably going to be fighting for a top 10 pick. And that's really why I think the South is the worst division in football. The 7th best division in football, otherwise known as the second worst division in the NFL, is the NFC South. And if you debated that the NFC South was the worst division in football, I wouldn't necessarily argue that it is not. Now, I think it's up for debate. But the reason I have the South in the NFC above the South in the AFC is because I think there's more teams that can compete to win the division. It's more competitive internally. Does that speak to the strength of the division against other teams outside the division? Maybe not. But I think at least 3 teams here can win this division. I'm talking about Carolina, New Orleans, Atlanta. And then Tampa Bay won the division last year and still has a lot of talent. What's really kind of holding me back with the Bucs is their quarterback situation is one of the worst in football. And their coach, I'm just not a fan of Todd Bowles, the head coach. We've seen enough from him that I just don't see it with him. Defensive coordinator-wise, he's good. But I also see a team that has some talent, right? Tristan Wirfs, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They still got Shaq Barrett, Vita Vea, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Antoine Winfield, Levante David, all these guys on defense as well. So they'll maintain some sort of competent nature on defense, but I have no belief in the quarterback. I have no belief in the leadership positions, which is a lot of winning in the NFL. So that team's going to be frustrating to watch. The other teams are interesting, all in different ways. Carolina doesn't have a lot to work with offensively, weaponry speaking, but I feel like Bryce Young with a good offensive line, a pretty good running game, a really good play caller in Frank Reich, a new coaching staff that I think is going to be fresh and rejuvenate this franchise and fan base. I think that's huge. I think Bryce is the best quarterback they've had in a while, even as a rookie. I think his decision-making, his accuracy, his poise will all be big things for this team. Defensively, I think they're better than they showed last year. If J.C. Horn can stay healthy, Brian Burns is there, Derek Brown is there, Shaq Thompson. They brought in Von Bell. I think there's a lot to like about this defense. I think overall they're not the most intriguing, high-scoring team, but I think they do enough well that could make them a very competent NFC team. You have the Atlanta Falcons, who are kind of a lot different from Carolina. Carolina kind of has very few weaknesses. I'd say Atlanta has major strengths and major flaws. So Desmond Ridder is the big question mark. How good will he be as their quarterback? We know they can run the ball. We know they're going to be a power running team that's going to absolutely bludgeon other football franchises. And they have great athletes. You know, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. They've got some on defense now with Jesse Bates. They upgraded the defensive line. But they still have, some weaknesses in terms of, the interior D-line's good. Yeah, I like the safeties, and I feel like A.J. Terrell should have a good bounce back. But I feel like the edge rush is concerning. Linebacker's a bit concerning. How the new defense, scheme-wise, look. And really my biggest thing is, can we trust Desmond Ridder to actually win enough games to make the playoffs? And that's my thing with them. Then we have the New Orleans Saints, where, again, I think they're a middling mid team, just like Atlanta and Carolina. I don't think any of these teams in a good division would win the division, but I think they're more like third or second place teams, just all 3 of them at the same time. New Orleans does have the most steady and reliable quarterback, but also I feel like they're getting kind of old, and I think they're desperately holding on to a past that is kind of gone. That being said, Chris Olave is there. Hopefully Michael Thomas can play. Alvin Kamara only has 3 games that he will miss. The offensive line ain't bad. The defense is pretty good. The last couple of years have been a top 10 defense, and the safeties are good. The corners are good. The secondary is strong. DeMario Davis, Cam Jordan. There's a good leadership there, but the coaching staff is concerning to me as well. So collectively, I view the NFC South as a 3-team race with another team that's probably not going to be very good because the main problems exist. And I just don't think there's an elite team. I don't even really think there's a X Factor dark horse type of team either as a contender. So that's what hurts the NFC South for me and makes them the 7th team out of the division rankings. The 6th best division in the NFL entering 2023 is the NFC West, which on the surface may seem a bit surprising. You hear the division NFC West and you think, whoa, that seems low because they've been so good for so long. Like at one point, this was the best division easily in the NFL. Not that long ago, by the way. But the NFC West is basically a two-team race. And I would even argue that it's more like a one-team race to win it and another team that's just going to make the playoffs. And two teams that are absolutely not just bad, like downright dreadful. At least that's how I view it. Depending on what you think of the Rams, you might upgrade this division's status. But personally, I don't see how the Rams are going to be any good. Like, Stafford is extremely concerning from an age standpoint, a cliff, just falling down that cliff standpoint, a health standpoint, and then you're talking about Cooper Kupp's already injured. The O-line's pretty terrible. I don't think their running game is going to be any good. The defense doesn't have any talent besides Aaron Donald that is really known. So yeah, they have a good coaching staff. I'll give you that. And if Stafford's healthy, they've got a quarterback you can win with. That's not enough, especially in this division. That's not enough in any division. They're a bad team. And I think they're going to finish in the bottom 5, 6 in the NFL this year. You're talking about a Cardinals team that might be one of the least talented teams I've ever seen on paper entering an NFL season. If Kyler Murray plays more than I expect, maybe they squeak a couple out that I don't see coming. They do have some things that I don't mind. I don't mind the offensive line. I think James Conner's fine. Marquise Brown is fine. I think Budda Baker's a great player. I think they've got aspects that are fine, but I don't think they really have anything to hang their hat on. There's a new coaching staff, a new management. There's a lot of new here. They're looking to rebuild. Seattle is a really promising, young, up-and-coming team. I think is a lock for a playoff spot, but I don't necessarily see them as a true contender. I think they're just outside that bubble of the Super Bowl. Geno Smith, can he take another step? DK, Lockett, Smith and Jigba as a receiving core is super fun. Noah Fant added in there. Kenneth Walker's a monster. The O-line should improve because they're young and they should get better. The defense, I think, should get better as well. Adding Bobby Wagner, Julian Love, another great corner and Devin Witherspoon. I think that's going to be a huge addition. Adding Draymond Jones. So they got really a lot better from a roster standpoint. I think maybe their coaching did them a lot of favors last year, but also the schedule, some luck, some underdog mentality came into play. So I think they got boosted by that, but I expect this team to win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games to get to that point. I just don't think they're going to win the NFC. So they're kind of like right under that tier. And then you look at the Niners, who are like a team that can win the Super Bowl. So that's kind of what holds this division above the bottom two, is they've got the 49ers, a team that has an elite coach, has an elite roster, has an elite defense, has a lot to like. And if Brock Purdy can put it together with the skill positions around him and Trent Williams blocking for him, this team can be as good as any team in this conference. So the 49ers, the NFC West, at number 6. At number 5, the NFC North. The NFC North is my number 5 because there's a lot of confusion about this division. I think this is the most confusing division in the NFL, not because the teams are necessarily bad, but because the teams are extremely different, I would say. Even the Detroit Lions, a team that everyone is kind of riding the bandwagon, they're different. Like, they've added a lot to this defense. It's very different, and you would suspect it's going to be better. We don't necessarily know, but the linebacking core is better, adding a first-round pick. The secondary is better, getting multiple 2 to 3 new corners, new safeties, all of it, right? The offense should be very good. It was good last year. The offensive line is elite. Jared Goff is very solid. Jahmyr Gibbs should take over for DeAndre Swift in probably an upgraded fashion. And you would expect eventually Jamison Williams will hit this field and be a good receiver, along with Amon-Ra, who's very consistent. So the Lions are a good team on paper. They haven't necessarily proven that they're a good team in reality. Like, they were a team that made a push last year for that playoff spot. They just weren't able to quite close on it. This year, it feels like they're going to make that claim. After Detroit, it gets real tough. You have the Chicago Bears, who I think is the worst team in this division. But if Justin Fields can learn how to pass, they can actually be good because the offensive line has a lot of talent. I think it's much better than people give it credit for. After the rebuild it went through this offseason with Nate Davis, a first-round pick right tackle, DJ Moore, with Darnell Mooney, with Cole Kmet, with the running backs they offer, Khalil Herbert, Dante Foreman, all that, they should have a promising enough offense for Fields to deliver here. Defensively, I think they're still very weak, but Yannick Ngakoue helps their weakest position, their pass rush. They did also add a nice DeMarcus Walker piece. You have a linebacking core that got massively improved with Edmonds and Edwards. The secondary is already pretty promising, young and up and coming. Brisker's my favorite there. So I feel like the Bears are kind of a team that's a bit of a X factor, kind of like an unknown. The Packers, same sort of thing for much different reason. They have a very similar roster, but the quarterback's different. The main piece is different. Everyone expects them to take a step back, but what if an improved camaraderie and staying on the same page actually improves the Green Bay Packers? That is entirely possible here with Christian Watson entering year 2, same as Romeo Doubs. Defensively, they get back Rashawn Gary. They added a first-round pick to this defense. I feel like there's a lot to like. Devontae Wyatt getting better. Quay Walker getting better. So this team could really get better with a different quarterback, which is tough to say when that other quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. And lastly, you have the Minnesota Vikings, a team simply with a very good offense and a very bad defense. And that's all you can really put it. But can Brian Flores find a way to make that very bad defense actually kind of respectable? And can Kirk Cousins find the magic that he had last year? So the Vikings have talent on both sides, mostly offense. They can win shootouts. They're going to be fun to watch. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Alexander Madison now. Decent offensive line, really good home field. There's things to like. They could compete for a wild card, but it feels like they're going to regress this year. So the North is really, the way I look at it, they're only going to send one team into the playoffs. I could see maybe 2, but I would be absolutely shocked if 3 of these teams had winning records. So that's how I view the North entering 2023. The 4th best division in the NFL entering 2023 is the AFC West. Yes, the division that we thought would be the best of all time before last season. It's not actually the best of all time, believe it or not. The Kansas City Chiefs ran away with the division last year almost immediately. And that shouldn't have been surprising, honestly. But I doubted the Chiefs coming into last season because they were really going through kind of like a rebuild of the roster. It just so happens that they absolutely struck gold in the draft last year, and it paid off. Now, the Chiefs are the team that's going to win this division as long as Mahomes is healthy. They still have Kelsey, Chris Jones, and I think the biggest thing here is they've got Andy Reid, but a defense that could really take a massive step forward and aid Mahomes to a lot of victories this year, not having to just score a bunch of points to win. The other teams are the question, right? If this division had a competent 2, 3, 4, you would look at this division as one of the 3 strongest. But you have questions about all 3 of them. The Chargers. Can the Chargers not charger this year? Can they stay healthy? Because if they stay healthy, they've got some talent. Especially offensively, they've got a lot of talent, loads of talent. And there's no excuses for Justin Herbert. Has a new play caller, right? Has a dynamic running back, has 2 good receivers, has a pretty decent enough tight end, and actually multiple tight ends that can catch the ball. He has an offensive line that's probably the best of his career entering this season, getting his left tackle Rashawn Slater back, having a very good center in Corey Linsley. And then you've got a first-round pick at wide receiver, Quentin Johnston, who's looking pretty good in camp overall. So they've got a lot of depth at receiver, the best O-line they've had, a defense that's got a good pass rush, that's got a solid secondary. If they can stay healthy, they're a team that certainly should fight for a wild card in even a difficult AFC with Herbert at the helm. After that, you've got the Raiders and the Broncos, two teams that could easily be bottom-of-the-barrel AFC teams or kind of like better than we think. I kind of tend to think that people are overrating the Broncos and underrating the Raiders. I think the Broncos will be better than last year, but I don't agree with people that think they're going to have a winning record or be a playoff team. I don't see enough from the receiving core or really the offense supporting Russell Wilson outside of an O-line that should improve this year due to their free agency additions, Mike McGlinchey being one of them, Ben Powers being another. Defensively, I think they're pretty good, but I don't think they're great, right? They've got stalwarts in Pat Surtain, Justin Simmons, but the pass rush leaves something to be desired. I'm not really sure about it, so I feel like Denver is going to improve 7, 8-ish wins, probably not 9 or 10. I think the Raiders have a really good offense. I think McDaniels, as long as he can figure out that fourth quarter thing, they should win more games than last year. They should at least win 7 or 8. If not, they could actually surprise people as an underdog team if their defense is half decent to win about 9. I mean, they really could be around that territory. There's also a possibility that this team, Jimmy Garoppolo, gets hurt. They win like 4. All right, so the Raiders are confusing. The Broncos are confusing. The Chargers are the Chargers. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. That's why this division is number 4. The third best division in the NFL entering 2023 is the NFC East. The NFC East is easily the best NFC division in football entering this season. All 4 teams could make the playoffs. I can make that argument to you right now. And I like all 4 teams. First of all, I think it's a 2-team race to win the division. It's between Philadelphia and Dallas. Both have good quarterbacks. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl last year. The Eagles have pressure now to really win. Last year, they kind of came onto the scene in a big way, and although that was expected from me, it wasn't expected from the public. It changes now. They lost a lot of pieces on defense that people really don't want to talk about, but in my opinion, they still have the best offense in the NFL, and that means a lot to me. They have a good head coach, a very good leader at quarterback. They'll figure it out. They'll win 11, 12, 13 games. Dallas improved this offseason. There's no way around it. I don't care if you're a Giants fan, Commanders fan, Eagles fan. They added Brandon Cooks, Stephon Gilmore, a first-round pick at D-tackle, all 3 of their weakest positions. Their offensive line's very solid. Hopefully Dak doesn't get hurt. They've got a better receiving core with Michael Gallup having another year removed from the injury. The defense is as good as any in football. A deep defensive line, the best maybe defensive player in football. He's at least in the conversation. A really awesome secondary that I think's the best in the NFL. And a pretty solid coaching staff. Not a great coach, but a solid coaching staff. I think Dan Quinn's a very good defensive coordinator. The Giants made the playoffs last year. Can they do it again? That's debatable. I feel like their O-line should get better. I think their receiving core on paper is better. Whether or not it's better in real life is a question. Saquon is a stud. The defense is on paper, again, better. But this team was a lot about situations, winning in the fourth quarter, winning by, the margins, Brian Daboll being a great coach, all that sort of stuff. Wink Martindale doing his diligence. So this team could maybe just get a little unlucky and end up missing the playoffs. But at the same time, it's hard to deny and doubt the coaching staff and what they were able to do last year. They could easily win 9-10, and then you're just saying they're maybe a little bit better than last year, which they should be based on the paper and the moves that they've actually made this offseason. Then you've got Washington, who is tough to kind of figure out because obviously you have a new quarterback in Sam Howell, who I actually kind of like, as you guys know, but even if he doesn't do well, you have Jacoby Brissett, a guy that actually played well last year for Cleveland. And I think people are sleeping on that notion. He played better than Deshaun Watson last year. And I think Sam Howell can do some nice things as a deep, aggressive, deep ball passer, along with being a rusher of the football that will take the league by storm. I think it's going to make people frustrated. I don't think a lot of people have that film on Howell to really digest what he is at the NFL level. I think the offensive line is kind of suspect, but not bad. I think the receiving core is really underrated. Jahan Dotson, I expect big things from. We know what Terry McLaurin can do. Curtis Samuel is a very, very different type of player. Running game's okay. Eric Bieniemy should help the offense overall. The defense is very solid. I think it's a little underrated. The secondary got a lot better this offseason. They added 2 of their top picks. Cameron Curl's good. Kendall Fuller's good. They've got enough pieces there. Linebacker's the only question, but defensive line is very, very rock solid. And if they get Chase Young back playing like Chase Young, they're going to be dangerous. So I could see Washington also being a wild card team in the situation where Howell is pretty good and the defense is good. So that is why the NFC East is my number 3. The second best division in the NFL this year is the AFC East. The reason I have the AFC East at number 2 and not number 1 is because I think there's more questions about the AFC East than there is my number 1 division. Now, maybe I'm underselling my own division here as a Patriots fan, but I think there's questions about New England, given that their offense was so terrible last year. How will they bounce back? I think there's questions about the Jets. How will Aaron Rodgers play in the big city with kind of a beat-up offensive line and kind of a mediocre at best coaching staff with a bunch of kind of goons at the helm? And then you have the Bills, who people think are going to regress. Miami, of course, is kind of basically relying on Tua to stay healthy, which is almost like a certainty he won't. And then we went over all the different things that could possibly happen with that in terms of Teron Armstead, in terms of Bradley Chubb, in terms of Jalen Ramsey already getting hurt. All these things that are very actually reasonable for the Miami Dolphins to actually have a bad season this year. So the AFC East is tricky because if you project the absolute peak outcome for every division, I think this division is probably the best because the Bills can win the Super Bowl. The Jets, if everything goes right, can win the Super Bowl. I think Miami, if everything goes right, can maybe get to the AFC Championship or even the Super Bowl. And New England could get to the AFC Championship if Mac becomes a very good player, like I think he can. The receiving core finds a go-to guy, and the defense is just as good as it can be, which is like top 3 in the league, and Belichick's Belichick. Like, yeah, I could see a run where they win a couple playoff games based on good defense and, early 2000s Patriots football. So I feel like this division has a very high ceiling. At the same time, I feel like all 4 teams can make the playoffs. I feel like 3 of the teams could miss the playoffs. I think New England could miss, Miami could miss, the Jets could miss. I think the Bills are a lock as long as Allen is healthy. He's the only quarterback that I can really rely on here. Rodgers is in a new situation and he's old. Max, a question mark. Tua is a question mark. I think at the same time, though, I think New England's underrated. I think their defense is very, very strong, and it's probably the best in this division. It's debatable with the Jets. They're both right there. And all 4 of these defenses are probably top 10. And then you have an offense that I think, because it was such a bad play calling situation, it has to be better. The O-line should be better. You've got decent enough weapons, bringing in Gesicki, Juju. You've got Bourne. You've got Parker. You've got Stevenson. You've got Henry and Gesicki as well. So feels like Mac will have enough to work with to squeak out 9, maybe 10 wins with a team that will protect the ball, play good special teams, play the possession battle, grind out games with a good defense, and win their games at home. That's just what New England does under Bill Belichick. Miami, they're going to be a roller coaster. There's going to be times where they look like an elite team. There's going to be times where they look like a bad team. And that's, I think, because of the infrastructure, because of the quarterback. I think that's also because the team is reliant on a lot of, kind of big names. So I think Miami can be very good. They've got a lot of talent, but there's also downside. The Jets, same thing. They have a brutal schedule. They could fall off the face of the planet early on, and they could rise later on. They have a very good defense. And in a real, like a very simplistic world, you add Aaron Rodgers to an excellent defense, they should make the playoffs. So AFC East is really tricky, man, but don't sell the Bills short. I will say that. A lot of people are sleeping on how good the Bills can be, and if everything goes right for them, they can win the Super Bowl this year. And I don't think a lot of people look at them this way, and I want to put that out there right now. The best division in the NFL entering 2023 is the AFC North. The AFC North is the best division in football. Going through each team, it's easy to see why. First, I think probably the worst team in the division is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you think of it that way, Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. Let me say that again. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the worst team in the AFC North. Does that give you enough reason to put them at number one? Okay, so you have Kenny Pickett, a player that's going into his second year. You have improved surroundings. You add Allen Robinson to the receiving core. You've got Pickens in year 2. You've got Deontay Johnson in a bounce back. You've got a good tight end. You've got a decent enough running game. An improved offensive line, most importantly. Adding Sayamalu, adding a first-round left tackle. A lot of good for Kenny Pickett here. Defensively, TJ Watt being healthy would be huge. I think they improved their cornerback group, and I feel like their defense is strong. It's not epic, it's not elite, but I would say it's around the top 10. So the Steelers have a very solid chance of competing for a playoff spot. The Browns are extremely talented. The Browns have as much talent as any team in the NFL. It's just a matter, can Deshaun Watson be Deshaun Watson? If he can, this team can go to the Super Bowl. I really believe that. Kevin Stefanski is a decent enough offensive coach and a decent enough coach overall. I think Jim Schwartz taking over the defense is a huge move. Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, Zadarius Smith, Okoronkwo, a lot of talent on the D-line. Getting a pass rush is huge. Linebackers are okay. Safeties are improved with Juan Thornhill. Corners are already good. 3 good corners across the board, led by Denzel Ward. The offense has a strong offensive line, one of the best in football. They've got a good tight end in Njoku. They've got a really awesome running back in Nick Chubb. They added Elijah Moore. They added Cedric Tillman. They've got Amari Cooper. They've got Donovan Peoples-Jones. They've got enough to work with here for Deshaun Watson. It comes down to Deshaun Watson. It really does. You've got the Baltimore Ravens, a team that also, in my opinion, could be improved because hopefully Lamar doesn't get hurt 3 years in a row. If he can stay healthy, this team can make the playoffs easily. They should have made the playoffs the last 2 years in a row. They made it last year, but they were kind of like a participation team because Lamar was hurt. So no one thought they could actually win. But they've got a way better receiving core, adding Zay Flowers, who's looking great in camp, and Odell Beckham Jr., who I've seen his highlights as well. The offensive line is top 5 in football across the board. They've got an excellent tight end and a defense that's always very solid. Is it elite? That is debatable. They don't have the pass rush for me personally, but a very good secondary, good linebacking duo, pretty solid interior, won't be ran on. And Lamar is Lamar. He's special. He's one of the best quarterbacks there is. And then you've got the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that's gone to the AFC Championship 2 years in a row, a team that's only expectation is to win the Super Bowl. Their offensive line's better, adding Orlando Brown. I think their receiving core is awesome. They brought back Joe Mixon, and defensively, they could be stronger. I know that they lost their safeties, but you add a first-round pick to the D-line, an already strong D-line, and you get better at corner. Chidobe Awuzie's back. I think that DJ Turner will help them out. I feel like they've got very few flaws on this roster, and I think at their peak, they can win any game against any opponent. So that is why the AFC North is, in my opinion, the best division in football. All 4 teams can have a winning record, and I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the year. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, spike the like button. Let me know in the comments about my thoughts for each division. If you agree with anything I said, disagree with anything I said a lot. So let me know what you thought. It's Mitch. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.